This is the Unbroken Protocol podcast. Now press play.
Welcome back to the Unbroken Protocol. I'm Abraham Spring, and today we're talking about caffeine. Is caffeine a performance tool or something that sabotages your sleep? You're not low on energy, you're overstimulated and under-recovered. Most people think caffeine is harmless because it's normal. Caffeine, tea, pre-workout, focus pills, fat burners, energy drinks, even those gels you down mid-ride. And the cultural story is simple. Caffeine equals productivity plus performance. We wear it like a badge. I need my coffee to function. Can't train without my pre-workout. We joke about it, meme about it, build our entire morning routine around it. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to hear. If deep sleep is the foundation of performance, and it is, by the way, then coffee is one of the easiest ways to quietly undo it. And the worst part, you still think you're doing everything right. You're tracking your sleep, you're going to bed early, you're avoiding screens, you're doing all the right things. But you're also dosing a stimulant that has a half-life longer than your evening, and wondering why your recovery never catches up. Today, I want to break down caffeine the same way we broke down health tracking in the last episode. Not as a good or bad, but as a tool that becomes a trap when it starts running the system instead of supporting it. Let me tell you how I learned this the hard way. Here's my story. I was borrowing energy I didn't have. I used to treat caffeine like recovery. Not literally, but functionally. That's exactly what I was doing. I'd wake up, feel a bit foggy, and hit the coffee. That sounds pretty standard for a morning ritual. Nothing crazy, right? Then training would come around, and I'd top up with another coffee, maybe two if it was a long session or I had work right after. And if it was a particularly hard session, my legs were tired that day, it was a big ride, a competition, or I just wanted to feel unstoppable, pre-workout was my go-to. The good stuff, like the 200 milligrams, sometimes a little bit more, to get that heart racing like crazy, right? I told myself the usual line. It's fine. I train hard. I need it. This is what athletes do. I saw other people at the gym doing the same thing. I saw cyclists knocking back espresso shots before a big ride. I saw triathletes with their caffeine protocols dialed in to the minute. So it felt validated, professional even. But then something started happening. And that is something I couldn't ignore. I do everything right for sleep. Early night, decent wind down routine, no doom scrolling, room nice and dark. And my sleep hygiene was impeccable. However, I'd still wake up feeling like my nervous system hadn't actually switched off. Like I'd been running a background processes all night. My body was there, but it hadn't rested. And the wildest part, sometimes I thought I slept fine. I'd fallen asleep quickly. I hadn't woken up much. No turning, no tossing around. By subjective standards, everything seemed okay. But then I'd look at my sleep data, because remember, I was tracking everything. And there it was, staring right back at me. My deep sleep was completely down. My wake-ups were up. Restlessness spiking, heart rate variability all over the place. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't tired because I lacked discipline. I wasn't failing at recovery because I was weak or not committed enough. I was tired because I was borrowing energy from a substance that was still in my system when my body was trying to do the most important job, and that was to recover. That's the caffeine trap, and it's insidious. It doesn't just give you energy, it gives you the feeling of energy, a temporary upgrade, a borrowed state, and then it invoices you later. Usually in the currency of sleep quality. And you don't even realize you're losing. You feel the buzz, you don't feel the cost until weeks or months down the line, you're burnt out and then you're left wondering why. The insights of what caffeine actually does and doesn't do. Let me break down what's really happening when you dose caffeine, because most of this gets oversimplified. So let's go into detail and break it down. Caffeine is not energy. It's a blocker. This is the most important thing to understand. And it's where the illusion starts. Caffeine doesn't give you energy. It doesn't create fuel. What it does, it blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain. Now, what adenosine receptors are? Just think of adenosine as the chemical that builds up throughout the day and creates sleep pressure. That growing feeling of tiredness that tells you it's time to wind down. Caffeine steps in and says, nope, not today, by occupying those receptors so adenosine can't bind. So you don't remove fatigue, you just mute the signal. That's why you can feel fine, alert, and focused like you're ready to go, and still be absolutely cooked underneath. Your body is tired. Your nervous system needs rest. But caffeine has turned off the dashboard warning light. So you keep driving. And that's where it gets really dangerous, because you stop listening to your actual state. And it gets even more insane, because the half-life is the part where everyone ignores. Here's where it gets technical, but just stay with me, because it's super important. In healthy adults, caffeine's average half-life is about 5 hours. But, and this is huge, it can range anywhere from roughly 1.5 to 9.5 hours depending on the person. Let me say that again, 1.5 to 9.5 hours depending on the person. The same coffee that clears out of one person's system in 2 hours can hang around in someone else's for nearly 10. Genetics, liver function, medication, hormones, age, all of this affects how you metabolize caffeine. Some people are fast metabolizers, others are slow, and most people have no idea which category they're in. So if you train at 6 o'clock and take a bit of caffeine at 4, a pre-workout, or an energy drink, there's a very real chance you're going to bed with caffeine still circulating in your bloodstream, still blocking adenosine, still keeping your nervous system in semi-alert state, when it should be downshifting into recovery mode. And you wonder why your sleep tracker says you've got garbage deep sleep. The next part is the one I commonly hear. I can sleep after coffee. Don't think that's a flex. Oh, caffeine doesn't affect me. I can drink coffee at 8 o'clock and fall asleep fine. Cool. Falling asleep isn't the issue. There's a classic study that showed a moderate dose of caffeine disrupted sleep even when taken 6 hours before bed. People fell asleep, but their sleep architecture was worse. Less deep sleep, more fragmentation, low quality recovery. And the newer research shows that a higher dose like 400 milligrams, which is what you get in a lot of pre-workouts, can disrupt your sleep depending on timing, even when people don't fully notice it subjectively. You fall asleep, sure. You think you've slept, but your body didn't get what it needed. And that's the trap I'm getting at here. You're not aware of the deficit. You just wake up not feeling great, and you reach for, you know it, more caffeine. So the cycle continues. Now, when it comes to the pre-workout culture, it's basically the tracking culture of stimulants. And here's where caffeine starts to look a lot like the health tracking problems we talked about in the last episode. It looks like wellness. It feels like performance. It's marketed as optimization, but it has some hidden mechanics. Escalation. 1 coffee becomes 2. 2 becomes a pre-workout because it's leg day. The pre-workout that used to feel strong now feels normal, so you start looking for a stronger one. That's tolerance. The dose that once worked becomes the baseline. You need more to get the same effect, and more and more. Now, when it comes to stacking, you'd have a coffee in the morning, energy drink at lunch, a pre-workout before training, caffeinated gel during a session. You're not counting it as one total. You're treating each source as separate, and suddenly you're way over your reasonable dose without realizing it. And that's where it turns from support into dependency. You're not using caffeine to enhance performance anymore. You're using it to function, to get through, to mask the fact that you're actually not recovering. Now let's talk about what caffeine does to your nervous system, because this is where the long-term cost shows up. Caffeine can amplify stress, especially in sensitive people, anxious people, or when your life already runs hot. It increases alertness. Yes, but it also increases tension. Heart rate goes up, cortisol can spike, your system starts to shift towards fight or flight. You get sharper, but you also get tighter, and you can't spend all day revving the engine and then be surprised when the car won't idle at night. I felt this viscerally. On days where I'd had multiple hits of caffeine, I'd lie in bed and my heart rate would still be elevated. My mind would still be racing. I'd feel wired and exhausted at the same time. That's a special kind of fatigue, where your body is done, but your brain won't shut up. That's your nervous system saying, dude, you're still in go mode and I can't downshift yet. And when that becomes your baseline, you start normalizing a state of chronic low-grade stress. You think that's just how you are. You start using identity to justify what's going on. I'm always on. Oh, I'm just a bad sleeper. But that's not you. It's the caffeine you're dosing on multiple times a day. Now, I'm not here to fearmonger, but I'm also not here to pretend that caffeine is consequence-free. Let's be adults about this. Your blood pressure. Caffeine can raise blood pressure so acutely, especially in people who already have hypertension. And when people go extreme, energy drinks, multiple servings, chronic high doses, doctors are increasingly flagging cardiovascular risk. There are case reports of young, healthy people ending up in emergency rooms with heart issues linked to excessive caffeine intake. The next part is about calcium absorption. Caffeine can slightly reduce calcium absorption and increase calcium loss in the short term. For most people with a decent diet, this is modest and manageable. But if your calcium and vitamin D intake is already poor, and let's be honest, a lot of people it is, then chronic high caffeine intake becomes another variable chipping away at bone health over time. Anxiety and mental health. For people prone to anxiety, caffeine can be a gasoline on fire. It can trigger panic attacks, worsen generalized anxiety, make you feel jittery and on edge in ways that aren't productive. If you're using caffeine to push through stress instead of addressing stress, you're making the problem worse. So no, caffeine isn't automatically bad, but pretending it's harmless, pretending it has no trade-off, pretending that you can dose it indefinitely without consequences, that's just childish, and it's going to cost you. Okay, now enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about application. How to use caffeine without letting it use you. Here's the unbroken rule, and it's simple. Use caffeine to amplify your system, never to replace it. If you're using caffeine to cover bad sleep, poor nutrition, no sunlight, chronic stress, or overtraining, then you're not using caffeine as a tool. You're using it as avoidance. You're patching over a problem instead of fixing it. And eventually, the patch fails. So let's build a framework, something you can actually use. Budget, ceiling, and curfew. Number 1, caffeine budget, your daily cap. Most guidance for healthy adults lands around up to 400 milligrams per day. As a general upper limit, that's roughly 4 cups of coffee or 2 strong pre-workouts. But here's the thing, safe doesn't mean optimal for sleep. And safe definitely doesn't mean optimal for someone who's already burnt out, sleep deprived, or running hot. If you're sleep sensitive, anxious, or in a high stress phase of your life, you might need far less, maybe 200, maybe 100, maybe just 1 cup of coffee in the morning and that's it. Pay attention to your body, not the ceiling. The ceiling is the limit, not your target. Protocol number 2, the caffeine ceiling, a single dose. Food safety guidance often flags around 200 milligrams as a sensible single dose in supplements for healthy adults. A lot of pre-workouts casually smash right past that. I've seen ones with 300 milligrams, 350, and even 400 in a single serving. And then you stack on top of coffee or energy drink and suddenly you're in a stratosphere without realizing it. So check your labels, add it up, don't assume. Protocol number 3, caffeine curfew, the timing rule. This is the one most people get wrong. Minimum rule, no caffeine within 6 hours of bed. That's backed by research showing caffeine can still disrupt your sleep architecture even at that distance. But if you're using high dose, like a big pre-workout, your curfew needs to be earlier. Think 8 to 12 hours, depending on how you respond. If you're a slow metabolizer and you don't know it, that 4 p.m. coffee might still be in your system at midnight. And that's why your deep sleep is suffering. So start conservative. Push your caffeine earlier in the day and see what happens to your sleep. You might be shocked. The 7-day reset. Do this, don't overthink it. If you think caffeine might be a problem for you, here's a simple experiment. No dogma, no drama, just data. For days 1 and 2, audit. Write down every source of caffeine, and I mean everything. Coffee, tea, pre-workout, energy drinks, gels, focus capsules, fat burners, even chocolate if you're eating a lot of it. Add the total up. You might be surprised. For days 3 and 4, move it earlier. Keep your total dose the same for now, just pull it forward in the day. If you're having coffee at 3 o'clock, move it to noon. If you're having a pre-workout 6 p.m., move it to 3 p.m. Most people are shocked how quickly sleep improves just by timing. For days 5 and 7, cut out the unnecessary hit. Drop the because I feel like it caffeine. Keep only the intentional dose, the one that actually serves a purpose. 1 morning coffee or 1 pre-workout, timed early enough not to hit your sleep. Not both, not 3, just 1. And here's the test. If you can't train without caffeine, you're not underpowered, you're under-recovered. If you can't function in the morning without caffeine, you're not lazy, you're not sleeping well enough. Caffeine should enhance performance. It shouldn't be the foundation. Here's the thing. I don't think caffeine is evil, but it's not innocent either. It's a drug, a powerful one, and it's so normalized, so woven into our culture that we forget it has a half-life, a cost, and a nervous system signature. If your deep sleep is suffering, if you're waking up tired, if your HRV is tanking, if you feel wired and exhausted at the same time, don't start with another supplement. Don't add another tracker. Don't blame yourself for not having to be recovered enough. Start with a simple question. Am I building recovery or am I renting energy? Because the goal isn't to feel wired. The goal isn't to be jacked up and buzzing through every session. The goal is to feel powerful and still sleep like a weapon. Caffeine can help with that, but only if you're honest about how you're using it. And only if you're willing to pull back when it stops serving you. So, audit your intake, respect its half-life, honor your sleep. And if you find yourself needing caffeine just to feel normal, that's not a caffeine problem. That's a recovery problem, and no amount of stimulants will fix that. I'm Abraham Spring, and I'll see you around.